I swore I would never do this. I actually made a promise to myself. But you know what? Let's get it over with. Let's talk about gear. All right, this is in no particular order going back to 1988. Ricoh XRP, Nikon N2020, Nikon FE2 with a screw mount, which is the first camera I ever shot an assignment on, Nikon FM2, Nikon FM3T, Nikon F3, Nikon F4, Nikon F5, Nikon F6. Yes, I used all of those at one point in my life. Canon A2E, Canon EOS 1, Canon EOS 1V, Leica M4P, Leica M6 times 1 times 2, Leica M4, which I still have, Leica R6 times 2, best glass potentially of any camera system I've ever used. Fuji 6x9, Fuji 6x6/6x7 folding rangefinder, unbelievable camera but fragile. Hasselblad 500cm, which I paid a grand total of $65 for. Back, body, lens, finder, a grand total of $65. And I used it shot commercially for 10 years with a $65 camera. Bought a second Hasselblad, 503 CW, so I could put a digital back on it. I paid a grand total of $500 for that. This is pre-hipster. Pre-hipsters finding about how good Hasselblad is. Olympus OM4 Ti, a smoking little camera system, by the way. I have two Voigtlanders rangefinders with an underwater housing that someone gave me. Zeiss rangefinder, great camera, but I had to carry screwdrivers with me because it fell apart all the time. 4x5 Crown Graphic, Pentax 645, Pentax 6x7, Yashica half-frame camera, Holga, Polaroid, and a Pentax K1000, but the camera in the Pentax line that I always wanted that I never had was the LX. If you don't know about the Pentax LX, where have you been? In a nutshell, those are the cameras I've used in my career. Okay, people, now that we have talked about an absolute buffet of cameras, I want to break down for a minute why I'm using the Fuji system. I have no affiliation with Fuji. I'm not sponsored by them. But since I've been on YouTube, which is about 6 months now, a lot of people have reached out and asked me equipment questions. And I figured if I do this film, I probably don't have to have those people reach out anymore. They can just watch the film and understand why I'm using this system. It's not a perfect system, but it's really good. And I have 6 trusty points in front of me in my trusty notebook as to why I am using this. Number 1 is size. These are very, very similar to the Leica cameras that I used forever, M4 and M6. The M4 is actually heavier than the Fuji because it's made out of brass, and the M6 is like a zinc alloy, so it's a lighter camera, very much in line with what the X-T2 is. Tandem with that is point number 2, which is the weight. I can carry this system all day, every day, and never think about it, whereas some of the other brands, the bigger camera systems, I just can't do it anymore. I don't want to carry a camera that size. So I'm used to carrying a Leica. This is even lighter, so that's a huge point for me because when I do get out to shoot, I tend to be in the field for extended periods of time. And I'm getting old, man. Like, I'm not 20 anymore. I can't just carry my donkey bag filled with like every single piece of camera equipment I ever had so that my back was like this after 20 years. Can't do it anymore. Point number 3 is by far the most important point, and I have no idea why I made it point number 3. I have no explanation, and that's capability. I would have never bought this camera if it didn't work. A lot of the prior generations of digital cameras were a hindrance to making photographs. They had shutter lags, they had bad viewfinders. They were not good cameras. They weren't quite ready for market. XT1 came along, good camera, X Pro 1, 2, 3, etc. This is a very capable camera. Again, I would never have bought this if it didn't work. One of the current projects I'm working on is an incredibly difficult project camera-wise because of what I'm shooting. And I bought a 50-140, the 2.8 Fuji lens, and a 2X converter specifically for this one story. I'll probably never use it again after I'm done with this story. And I bought it thinking, I'm probably throwing my money away because I don't think it's gonna work. It's not gonna work for this. And lo and behold, it works. And like 11 frames a second, tack sharp, works even with a 2X converter. Now, historically, 2X converters were terrible from everyone. They were soft, they weren't sharp. I have to say, potentially, the Fuji 50-140 and the 2X converter are the best combination of that I've ever had in any system. So don't let that go to your head, Fuji, because you still make bonehead moves from time to time. Number 4 point why I'm using this camera system are the menus. Just to give you, before we go any further, just to give you a little idea of how simple I am. Typically, the only time I ever go in the menus is to reformat my card. That's the only time I go in. Now, for you geeks out there, I know what you're thinking. You're like, Milner, that suspiciously does not look like a Fuji lens on the front of that X-T2. And you know what? Thanks for being so inquisitive. It's not, in fact. It is a Chinese lens that I just bought because who doesn't want a 0.95? because I was told by the advertisement that it would make my photography 1,000 times better. And I totally believe that. And it's called Speedmaster. And who doesn't want to use the Speedmaster? To use that lens, I had to go in the menus and make adjustments. And it had been so long since I was in the menus, I literally looked it up online just to cheat a little bit. But so simple, so basic. Number 5 is ergonomics. So this is very similar to cameras that I've been using going all the way back to 1988, where the dials are on top, exposure comp, shutter speed. In this case, you have your basically your ASA or your film speed settings on the left, your dials that go from single exposure, continuous high, low, movies, etc. It is so easy to use in the field, even with gloves and in the dark. You can still use it, and that's a huge upside to me. If you can't do that, if I have to go in a menu to make an adjustment, I would lose my mind. I would quit photography. I'm not joking. You think I'm joking? Don't think I'm joking, because I would quit photography. And finally, point number 6, believe it or not, is cost. When I priced out this camera, this system initially, which was 2 bodies, 3 lenses, and a booster, and something else I can't remember what I bought, I could probably never used it, I was shocked at how inexpensive it was. And I'm hope Fuji doesn't take that and raise their prices, but they're never going to see this anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it's a really affordable system. You can get an entire system for what it costs to buy a body in another line. Now, that other body might be full frame. There may be aspects about it that are maybe a little bit superior to what the Fuji has, but I don't really get to shoot that much anymore. And I've not yet run into a situation with this camera that I said, oh, this doesn't work, or, oh, I wish I had another camera. I actually really like it. There's not anything about it that I really don't like. I've never had these cameras malfunction in hostile weather, whether it's cold or hot, and I cannot say the same about a lot of cameras on this list. I've had Leica's break, I've had Canon's break, I've had Hasselblad's break, Olympus's break. What else on here? My 4x5 Crown Graphic parts used to fall out while I was shooting portraits of people, and I had to spin it as if it was some cool thing that no one else had. Anyway, if you don't know about the Fuji system, it's definitely worth checking out. I hope this film was helpful, and for all those folks who've reached out and asked me questions about equipment, I'm hoping that this film addresses pretty much all of those. And for those few who might have an additional question, go ahead and reach out. Otherwise, good luck, and most importantly, go use your camera.